Khushboo Razdan, and this is Foreign Correspondents Talk Series 2024, an initiative by the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents USA, where we invite members of the foreign press community to talk about their work story and experiences. And today, I have with me Washington-based Spanish journalist Gustau Alegret. Gustau, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here with you.
So you are based in Washington, right? That was correct.
Yes, that's correct. I'm in DC.
Okay, perfect. So tell me, what kind of stories and beats do you cover here, and how long have you been here?
I landed in 2007, August 26, 2007. And it was the beginning of my dream. I was growing up in Spain. I grew up in Spain and always wanted to have an international experience. So I came to study at Georgetown. I was doing a full-time program for 1 year, 2007, 2008. And my idea was coming back and try to do or find a new job in Spain with my American experience. But suddenly the crisis exploded in Europe and all around the world, and I decided to stay. I had more opportunities here, so I found a job and I started to work as a correspondent. And since then, it's more than 16 years. So wow. Great experience and this country. I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I found in the US.
So how is your work experience different from, say, Europe when you're working here as a correspondent? Because you're an international correspondent here. Back home, you're a domestic correspondent. How does that work? And what other type of stories do you chase here when you are as an international journalist?
Well, the journalism is the same. Doing journalism, it's asking the right questions and trying to explain what is your perspective, or at least your point of view regarding to some facts. No, always trying to hide your personal opinions and explaining what is going on. And I think one of the most significant differences between Spanish journalism and American journalism, it's the level of respect that you perceive from high-level officials in the US government, the White House, the Congress, regarding to the media, the level of respect and relation that you feel when you work in Spain. Here, you see always the president looking one-on-one to journalists, and they respect each other. They accept the role of the other, particularly the president when the presidents are being asked by the media, right? So that's one of the most striking things that caught my eye when I landed in the US and I started to work. And being a correspondent is different than being a journalist working in a news outlet, in the newsroom, going to find a story, coming back, writing, reporting in a radio station, in a news agency, as I did when I was in Spain. So being a correspondent is tackling all the topics of this country. And that gives you a broad perspective than when you are working in a specific section, politics or social issues or abortion or one specific thing in Spain. So it's quite enriching working as a correspondent, because you tackle everything, almost everything, and you get a broad perspective of this country. You understand better the country because you tackle many topics, many things.
So, I also know that you have won a lot of awards for your work. So if you could tell me what were the stories that you were covering that got you that recognition and awards?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an honor being recognized as a journalist for my job. And when I say my, I mean the team that I was working with me. And this is very important. Awards are the gasoline of our journey as a journalist to keep going, keep doing as a team. I cannot do anything without my team. I can direct a team, I can lead a team, but I need the team, and the team is part of the award. So that's the first thing that I want to highlight. So all the awards are a recognition, also the hard work of my team every time that I was just getting these awards. The second thing is, I'm very proud of the recognitions, because most of them are for social reporting.
Mhm.
I mean, when I was talking about in a documentary in Costa Rica about teens pregnancy at a level of 10 years, 12 years old, 13 years old. So that was impressive. And it was something that we wanted to denounce, highlight, and put on the spot. Other topics about immigration, but not the laws, but the people. When we talk about DACA, the Dreamers, they're people with stories, and this is what we wanted to highlight. So that kind of stories were the ones that got recognition in many awards, the Emmy Awards, the Napolitan Victory Award, and others, right? And I'm very proud of that because I think journalism it has a social component. It's not always about politics. There are other components, other angles, and the social one is one that I think it's very important.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, you said that as a journalist, as a correspondent, you cover a wide range of issues. It's not just one beat that you cover, and you cover a lot of things. Is there anything particular that sticks with you? You said social. So you said you covered teen abortions in where, I'm sorry, is it Latin America, right?
Yeah, it was Latin America. It was not about abortion. It was about a pregnancy.
Okay. And can you explain what story was that? Have you found any such stories in the US? Have you thought that, these are such stories, these are such social stories that I can cover in the US?
Well, maybe it's a common area, but immigration. Immigration is one of the most fascinating topics when you are a reporter, because when you read about or you hear about immigration, everybody thinks about laws, Congress, legislation, finding common ground, Republicans and Democrats, the presidency. But all of this is related to people who are leaving their countries, trying to find a better future, a better life. And those stories are behind the laws, the politics, and everything. So you cannot understand politics or the legislations, politicians particularly cannot do a good job if they do not understand the personal stories of the people who are coming. And these people are not coming because they don't have another plan, or because they decided to change their lives with no reason. There are reasons: climate change, violence, extortion, economic reasons, insecurity. You have to understand the situation of those families with young children, adolescents, individuals in general that wanted to leave behind this hard environment to find a better world. And when they arrive to the US, most of them work very hard. They sometimes have 2 works and some even 3. I don't know many Americans born and raised in the US with 3 jobs, 8 hours each, on the weekend, in the evening, in the morning. And they're good people. They're very good people. Of course, you can find bad people among them, as you can find bad people among every group, social group, because it's a social condition, it's a human condition. But the bad people cannot define the vast majority of the good stories that are dramatic. And those people deserve better treatment from politicians, from Washington in general. That's one of the things that when you report about immigration, I always have this in my mind.
So, you also cover Latin American community in the US. What is their perspective on immigration? Because a lot of times it feels like the Latin American community kind of supports immigration, but somehow my 3 years in the US, I've come to realize that there is a section amongst the Latin American community, even the Asian community, that doesn't want more immigrants coming from the southern border.
Well, many things here. The first one, when we talk about the Hispanic or Latino community, there is no an homogeneous group. A Dominican living in New York has nothing to do, or everything to do, as an American from Montana. So they live in the same country. That's it. But a Dominican in New York is completely different from a Mexican living in Texas, from a Venezuelan living in South Florida, or Nicaraguan living in Connecticut. They are absolutely different. You cannot deal with immigration in general, particularly when we talk about Latin America, and think in a homogeneous group. That's the first thing. A Cuban from Cuba living in South Florida are totally different. Politically, economically, socially, they are different. So this is the first thing that we have to bear in mind. The second thing is they have strong roots with their own countries, and even much more than an European living in the US. So when you want to talk about their stories, you need to understand what is going on in their countries. And Latin America is almost a whole continent, from the Rio Bravo, Mexico, down to the Patagonia region in the South Cone. Argentina is different from Bolivia. Bolivia is different from Colombia. Colombia is different from Mexico. It's true, they speak Spanish, with the exception of the Anglo-Caribbean and some French Guianas and Brazil. But mostly Spanish is their languages. And that's a cultural bond to all of them. But they are different from different political backgrounds and political and social traditions. So that's another thing. You need to understand each country, or at least most of them, to understand the realities in the US. And it's fascinating because I was working for an international news channel, and it was mostly focused on Latin America. And that gives me a perspective, a window to understand a whole region. I was living in Spain, growing in Spain, and Spain looks more to Europe rather than to the Atlantic, rather than to Canada, US, or Latin America. And when I landed here, I realized that this country looks more individually to the south than to the Europe or the whole continent.
So how do you think this immigration issue is impacting the relationship between the United States and that whole continent, and even separate countries, like you said, that they're different countries? How is this impacting the bilateral relationship between different countries and the US and with the continent as a whole?
I think it's a bittersweet relation, because the US needs to improve the quality of and the environment of those communities down there, to reduce the number of migrants. That's one thing that is crystal clear. Also, the governments need these two, because politicians need to deliver. And when you deliver, it's because you offer something positive to those communities. But at the same time, Latin American people look to the US as a desired country. They land here full of happiness, and they came to get the American experience. So countries in Latin America needs to balance the relation between the US and their own government and their own society, it's particularly from the left-wing governments, that they like to promote these anti-gringo policies. But the society is not anti-gringo. The society mostly are US friendly. They look to the North with a positive perspective, economically, security, stability, politically. I mean, it's a bittersweet relation. And the US government is always, no matter who is at the White House, Republicans or Democrats, they're always trying to find the common interest between those governments and the US governments to advance their relations.
And how is China fitting into this bittersweet relationship? We are seeing this geopolitical competition for influence, and Latin America, in recent years has become this battleground for influence as well. China is trying to come and have its own BRI plan, have its own people there. There are a lot of Chinese social media and Chinese journalists who are gaining popularity in countries like Brazil. So how is China coming into this position, and how do the Latin Americans, the whole continent, and they look at China's presence on their land, and how do they see it in competition with the US?
I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge is that China is a superpower. It's is at the same level as the US. Maybe less, maybe a little bit more, but they're competing at one neck to neck, right? And Latin America is usually, for proximity, the natural area of influence of the US. But the lack of strategy and politics in Washington over the last decades has opened a door for China and other global powers like Iran or Russia to increase their influence. And that's one of the things that we have to realize. And the US has allowed in some ways this increase of influence of other regional actors. Well, second, China is an economic superpower. And countries, as one of the presidents told me in one interview, China can offer what their Latin American countries need: money, investment, infrastructure development. If no other Bretton Woods tools offer them, countries have the responsibility, governments have the responsibility to find the best way to increase or improve quality of life of their citizens, and China offers that. For me, the main point behind China's increased influence in the region is China is opaque. China is not transparent as the US is. And the question is, what is behind this generosity, China generosity with Latin America? And if there is no transparency, then journalism should start asking questions. But some analysts highlight the risk of this growing influence of China in Latin America with no transparency. Because what are the interests of China? Military? Economically? What are the laws that respects the workers' rights when they build a metro or a highway or any other infrastructure in Latin America? So over the last decades, workers in Latin America and all around the world have fight for their rights. And is China respecting those rights? If not, we're here in front of a violation of local laws, and governments have to just jump into this question and stop this, not allowing those practices to spread in the whole region. So it's something that we have to balance. We have to understand that China offers things that governments need, but at the same time, we have to look at those conditions and make sure that those conditions follow the laws and are transparent as it should be in any liberal democracies in the world.
My last question before I let you go: there's an election in the US in November. How are how is the Hispanic community in the US going, looking towards this election? What are their main issues? Which is their favorite candidate? And how is the Latin American countries, looking at the change of, the political transition, the expected political transaction? Are they also nervous about Trump coming back into power?
Well, as I mentioned before, Hispanic community is not a monolithic group. So according to the polls, 6 out of 10 Latin American or Hispanic Americans or Latino Americans in the US, living in the US, support Democrats. And around 4 out of 10 support Republicans. The question is, how many are going to be with their previous options, so Democrats with the Joe Biden candidate or Republicans with Donald Trump, and how many are going to move? Because in half a dozen states, it's where the election is going to be decided. And those groups are growing. The Latino community is growing so fast in the US. So maybe in some of those states, the Latino community can be the final step that each candidate needs in order to get the electoral votes of these states. It's something that we don't have an answer, a clear answer. But what it's clear according to the polls is that the number of Latinos supporting Democrats are reducing a little bit, and the support to Republican the candidates is growing a little bit. How much this movement is gonna be decisive in order to allow one candidate or the other to get the electoral votes of those critical states? That's the question, and I think nobody has the answer right now.
Until November 2024.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and all the insights. And, I live in the same city, so let's stay in touch. I'll see you soon.
Sure. Thank you, Khushboo, for this opportunity.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.